I never thought my in-laws would actually kick me when I was down, literally. It all started 3 months ago when a sudden illness knocked me off my feet. I went from an active, independent 29-year-old woman to barely being able to get out of bed. My husband, Daniel, tried to be supportive at first, but his parents? They made it clear I was no longer welcome in their house, even though Daniel and I paid half the bills. One morning, I was lying in bed, fighting nausea and fatigue, when the bedroom door burst open. My mother-in-law, Marlene, stood there with her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin, cruel line. "We've had enough, Emily," she said. "You're a leech. You're not contributing. You just lie there all day, eating our food, wasting our electricity. Get out!" Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. I froze. My chest tightened. My father-in-law appeared behind her, nodding in agreement. "You're dead weight, Emily. Daniel deserves better. Pack your things." What they didn't know was that I was contributing. In fact, from that very bed, in the middle of my so-called worthless days, I was building something that would change everything. But I stayed quiet. For now. I had been bedridden for weeks after my diagnosis, chronic fatigue syndrome. Some days, even lifting my phone felt like a marathon. But lying in bed didn't mean my brain had stopped working. While Marlene and her husband assumed I was rotting away, I had quietly started freelancing online. At first, it was just small projects, graphic design gigs, writing product descriptions. But soon, I landed a long-term contract with a marketing agency in New York. The pay? Let's just say my monthly income was more than Daniel's yearly salary. I didn't tell anyone, not even him. I wanted to build a safety net, my own bank account, my own savings. Because deep down, I knew I couldn't rely on this family forever. That morning, after my in-laws stormed out, I opened my laptop and saw a wire transfer notification. $18,750. My biggest payout yet. I smiled faintly. "Leech, huh?" I whispered to myself. "Let's see about that." That evening, Daniel came home from work, looking tense. I could tell Marlene had gotten to him. "Emily," he started, avoiding my eyes, "Mom's right. It's not fair that you're not contributing. Maybe you could at least try to find a part-time job." My hands clenched under the blanket. He didn't even ask how I was feeling. He didn't know, or care, that I was already earning more than he ever had. From the hallway, I heard Marlene's voice, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You should just go back to your parents, Emily. This isn't a charity." Then the final straw, my father-in-law muttered. "Daniel could do so much better. Maybe find someone who can actually stand on her own 2 feet." I felt the heat rise in my chest. My whole body trembled, not from illness this time, but from pure, controlled fury. I decided, right there, I was done hiding. I would let them see exactly what this so-called leech had been doing in bed. The next Saturday, Marlene hosted one of her family brunches. She made it clear I was barely welcome, but I showed up anyway, laptop in hand. The kitchen smelled of pancakes and resentment. Marlene shot me a look as I sat at the table. "Didn't think you'd have the energy to join us," she said sweetly, which really meant, "You don't belong here." I smiled back. "Oh, I have energy today. In fact, I have something to share." I opened my laptop, turned it toward Daniel, and pulled up my bank account. His eyes widened instantly. The balance read, $146,520. "This is what I've made in the last 4 months, from this bed," I said calmly. Silence. Even the clink of cutlery stopped. Marlene blinked, then forced a laugh. "You're lying." I clicked open my contracts, invoices, and payment receipts, all with dates and clients' signatures. "So, Marlene, remind me again. What was that word you used?" "Leech?" Daniel's face turned pale. My father-in-law shifted uncomfortably. And me? I just kept smiling. Marlene's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. For once, she had no sharp retort ready. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, stammering. Emily, why didn't you tell me? I tilted my head. Oh, you mean between being called a burden and a charity case? Guess it slipped my mind. My father-in-law cleared his throat and muttered something about misunderstandings. But I wasn't in the mood to let them off easy. I leaned forward. Do you know what's funny? While you were all so busy calling me useless, I've been paying off your credit card debt, Daniel. Quietly. Because I didn't want your family to think less of you. Daniel's eyes shot up in shock. Marlene looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. The silence that followed was delicious. Every second of it was a tiny victory. From that day on, they never called me a leech again. In fact, Marlene suddenly became so proud of me. But I didn't buy it for a second. Because I knew the truth, they only respected money. And now, I had more of it than all of them combined. 2 weeks later, I decided to put the cherry on top. Daniel and I were invited to another family gathering, and this time, I came prepared. As everyone sipped coffee in the living room, I stood up and announced, I have some news. I've just signed a new contract. It's worth $300,000 over the next year. Gasps. Marlene's coffee cup froze midair. My father-in-law actually sat forward for the first time ever when I spoke. I continued, and since I've been doing so well, I thought it would be nice to help family. I'm donating $20,000, but not to you. Their faces fell. It's going to a local women's shelter for women who really need support when they're down. The room went dead silent. I smiled sweetly, picked up my bag, and walked out. That was the last time they ever tried to belittle me. Now, they only call to check in, which I ignore most of the time. Because sometimes, the best revenge is living so well they can't stand it. Life after that day felt lighter. I kept working from the comfort of my home, signing bigger clients and building my savings. My health slowly improved, and so did my confidence. Daniel, well, he suddenly became the supportive husband he should have been all along. But I didn't forget how quickly he had let his family trample me when I was at my lowest. One evening, as we sat on the porch, Daniel said, You know, Mom keeps talking about how proud she is of you. I laughed. She's not proud of me. She's proud of my bank account. He didn't argue, because he knew it was true. The beauty of it all? I no longer needed their approval. I had built my own security, my own pride, and my own peace. And as far as I'm concerned, the best view in the world is from the top, when everyone once thought you'd never climb at all. A few months later, I got a message from Marlene. It wasn't her usual condescending tone, it was short, almost pitiful. Emily, I was wondering if you could help us. We're having some financial trouble. I stared at the screen for a moment, a smirk tugging at my lips. I typed back. I'm sorry, Marlene. I only help people who never kicked me when I was down. Then I hit send. It felt better than signing any contract, better than earning any check. This was my full circle moment, not just the money, but the power to choose who gets my help. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. Word got around town that Daniel's parents had overextended themselves financially. They'd tried to keep up appearances, buying expensive clothes, hosting dinners, but the debt finally caught up. One evening, I overheard Daniel on the phone with his father. Dad, Emily isn't a bank. You treated her horribly, remember? There was a pause. Then I heard his father mutter. We didn't think she'd actually make anything of herself. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it hurt, but because it proved just how small-minded they'd been. The same people who had called me a leech now needed the person they once tried to push out of the family. And they hated every second of it. A week later, Marlene and her husband showed up at my door. They didn't look proud anymore, just tired, desperate, and smaller somehow. Marlene tried to smile. "Emily, we were wrong about you. We need help with our mortgage. Just a small loan." I leaned against the doorframe and let the silence stretch. "Finally," I said. "I'll help, but on one condition. You apologize. Not just for calling me a leech, but for every cruel thing you said while I was sick." Her face tightened, but she muttered, "I'm sorry." I smiled sweetly. "For what exactly?" She swallowed hard. "For calling you a leech. For treating you like you were worthless." I stepped aside just enough for them to see the large framed check on the wall, my first six-figure payment from my business. "I'm glad we cleared that up," I said, "because I don't lend money. Goodbye." I closed the door, heart pounding with satisfaction. That was the last time they ever came begging. And the best part? I didn't just win financially, I won my dignity back, too.